All right, let's cut through the noise and get straight to it. There's been a crazy battle brewing in Washington, and it directly affects your mail, your government, and the folks who make it all run. We're talking about a sneaky attempt to mess with federal and postal workers and how a few good people and a super important rule stepped in to block the madness. Here's the deal. Some politicians were trying to slip some really nasty stuff into a big, fat spending bill, the kind that usually just sails through. This bill, known as H.R. 1, was packed with provisions that looked like a direct hit at the people delivering your mail and keeping our government working. Think of it as a low blow against the backbone of America. One of the biggest attacks? A plan to jack up what postal and federal employees pay into their retirement. We're talking about their FERS contributions. FERS is like their pension plan, their future security, and the idea was to make them shell out way, way more. For some, specifically newly hired or promoted EAS-level postal employees, the provision wanted to hit them with a 5% increase for at-will hires and a 10% increase if they chose merit-based protection. That's a chunk right out of their pockets before they even start. But get this. For all postal employees hired after January 1st, 2026, the Senate was considering ramming through a massive 15.6% increase to their retirement contributions. The National Association of Letter Carriers president, Brian L. Renfro, called this a disgusting attack on future letter carriers and nothing more than a significant pay cut. This isn't just bad for the workers, it's bad for all of us. If the government can't offer competitive pay and benefits, who's going to want to work for Uncle Sam? We need sharp, dedicated people in these jobs, and you don't get them by gutting their pay. This kind of move makes it harder for the government to hire the best and brightest, meaning a slower, less efficient America. An opinion piece pointed out that increasing contribution rates might seem like a good idea if federal employees were overpaid, but not if they earned less, noting that typically their generous benefits compensate for lower wages compared to the private sector. Some folks even pitch this idea as part of a grand proposal, let's call it one big beautiful bill, that suggested federal workers were getting paid too much. But if you talk to the people on the ground, the ones working their tails off, they'll tell you the generous benefits often just make up for wages that aren't exactly private sector superstar levels. But the retirement grab wasn't the only dirty trick. These politicians also wanted to slap a $350 fee on anyone trying to get due process through the Merit Systems Protection Board. What's that? It's basically where federal employees go if they feel like they've been unfairly treated or fired. It's their right to fight for justice. And these guys wanted to charge them just to open the door to justice? That's like charging someone for the right to defend themselves in court. It's an absolute disgrace and a clear attempt to shut down any challenges to bad decisions. It's meant to make it harder, more expensive, and just plain out of reach for regular workers to stand up for themselves. This kind of move screams, we don't want you fighting back. And if that wasn't enough, they targeted the post office itself. They wanted to force the USPS to sell off its entire electric vehicle fleet. And not just the vehicles, but all the charging stations and everything else that supports them. The post office has been pushing hard to modernize, to go green, to save money on gas in the long run. They're investing in the future, trying to be smarter and cleaner. And these politicians wanted to hit the brakes, sell everything off, and force them back into the gas guzzlers. It's a move that makes no sense, especially when you remember the post office isn't funded by your tax dollars anyway. They run on their own dime, from the postage you buy and the services they provide. So for Congress to butt in and tell them how to run their vehicle fleet, forcing them to sell off their forward-thinking investments, it's just another example of a pointless attack. So how did this train wreck get stopped? Enter the Byrd Rule. This thing is a total game changer. It's a Senate rule that basically acts like a referee in a wrestling match. When a bill comes up, especially one dealing with the budget, the Byrd Rule says if any part of this bill has nothing to do with the budget, or if it adds to the national debt in the long run, or if it doesn't really have a budget impact, then it can be challenged. And if challenged, it needs a supermajority of 60 senators to pass, not just a simple majority. Think of it as a special guardrail that stops senators from trying to sneak unrelated policy changes into budget bills that only need a simple majority vote. It's meant to keep the budget bill focused on, well, the budget. And that's exactly what happened here. Senator Gary Peters, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, threw up a point of order against these provisions. He basically flagged them with the Senate official rule enforcer, the parliamentarian. And the parliamentarian, the Senate's impartial umpire, reviewed these nasty provisions and ruled that they absolutely violate the Byrd Rule. Victory! This meant that to keep those provisions in the bill, they would suddenly need the support of 60 senators. Now, that's a huge problem for the folks who want to cut postal workers' pay and stop the post office from going green. Why? Because there are already at least 47 senators who are totally against these terrible ideas, and some Republican senators have even indicated support for NAP's position. That means finding 60 votes? Impossible. It's a no-go. The numbers just aren't there. This ruling was like a knockout punch to these anti-worker, anti-post office schemes. Organizations like the National Association of Postal Supervisors, NAPS, and the National Association of Letter Carriers, NALC, didn't just sit around and watch this happen. NAPS, for instance, communicated with its members, was in constant communication with Senator Peters' staff, and reached out to Senate allies on both sides of the aisle on this issue. They engaged in aggressive grassroots lobbying. The NALC rallied their members, urging them to take action by calling Congress and visiting their Legislative Action Center to say hell no to increase retirement contributions. This wasn't some quiet backroom deal. This was grassroots power. Regular people making their voices heard, telling their elected officials, hell no, not on our watch. Their aggressive lobbying, their constant communication, that's really what helped turn the tide and get those bad provisions flagged and ultimately taken out. So for now, the immediate danger has faded. Those plans to make postal workers pay way more for retirement, to charge them for justice, and to force the post office to sell off its electric vehicles, they're likely getting stripped out of the big spending bill. The good guys won this round. But hold on a minute, don't pop the champagne just yet. While this specific threat has backed off, the danger isn't completely gone. The people who want to mess with federal and postal workers aren't just going to pack up and go home. They're already talking about tweaks to pension plans, and these hazards could definitely pop back up, especially as we head toward the next general election in 2026. This isn't a one-and-done fight. It's an ongoing battle to protect our essential workers and ensure our government services run smoothly. We have to stay vigilant. It's crucial for all Americans to understand this. When you attack federal and postal workers, you're not just hurting them. You're hurting the quality of service you get. You're hurting the ability of the government to attract talented people, and you're weakening the very system that serves you, from delivering your mail to keeping the country secure. These battles aren't just about obscure rules in Washington, they're about how well our country works for all of us. All right, that's the lowdown for today. If you found this useful, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next breakdown, and ding that bell to get notifications. We're here to make sense of what's happening and keep you informed. See you next time.